Today I will talk about a movie that is destined to be the blockbuster of the year, the sci-fi thriller movie, The Platform. Despite being known as the vertical version of Ice Train, it's more confusing, darker, and more philosophical. If 18 layers of hell really existed in this world, then it would definitely be the following scenes. However, the world in the near future had such a strange hell. Prisoners didn't go to prison judging by their crimes but were randomly assigned to different floors. The only thing that could reach the cell was a suspended stone table that worked based on black technology. If you were lucky, you might be able to eat a hearty dinner. If you were unlucky, you could only have a junkyard. One day, this vertical bottomless cave like hell had a newcomer. He awoke from his coma and looked at the solid and cold mud wall. Along with the eye-catching 48th floor, he couldn't help but feel bewildered. Who am I? Where am I? What should I do? The inmate claiming to be Trimagasi smiled and told him, "Boy, you have a lot of question marks, don't you? Don't rush, let's memorize 1,000 rules I tell you, and you'll be able to survive, Gareng." As soon as he finished his words, there was an explosion overhead. Gareng raised his head to look. A tons-weighing plank slowly lowered down like an elevator and stopped right in front of them. Facing a table of leftover food, the man didn't want to eat, but Trimagasi saw other people's leftovers as a sumptuous meal. Not only did he eat it up, but he also didn't forget to remind the guy, "Food is very important. You will be very hungry if you miss a meal. If you don't eat 3 meals, you will die." Gareng did not believe it, and didn't eat a piece of food for 3 days. Then he figured out the monstrous food rule in this prison. A hearty meal was delivered during the day, from top to bottom, and stopped for 5 minutes on each floor. Leftovers from upstairs would go downstairs. Every morning, the plank suspended and lowered to the lowest floor would rise quickly to the top floor like a car engine. If someone dared to hide the food, the room would automatically form 2 layers of fire and ice, and the punishment would be death. Then, Trimagasi pulled out a small 40 centimeters knife and spoke to Gareng proudly. "Everyone before going to jail can choose a personal thing. This knife of mine can save my life at a critical moment. But you only brought 1 book. How naive. Knowledge cannot change fate in here." As expected, when the 4th day came, hunger rose like a tide, engulfing Gareng's mind. The moment the table slowly stopped, he threw away the dignity of a civilized man, crawled in the garbage and devoured it like a wild stray dog. Gareng had only arrived a few days, but he had figured out a way to live harmoniously. If the people upstairs divided the food by portion, the prisoners downstairs wouldn't need to eat the trash. However, he looked up and screamed, but no one minded him. He shouted to the downstairs, again, no one responded. Human selfishness was exaggerated to the most. The prisoners on each floor all worshipped a principle. As long as they eat, the rest could live and die. Not everyone can live to the end in this fierce environment. Gareng witnessed someone who couldn't stand the torment, jumped from a high floor to a deep abyss, and turned into a pile of meat. Trimagasi laughed coldly, he got used to it. On the contrary, death is liberation. The hungry ghosts downstairs are all waiting to eat people. Hearing that, Gareng felt his heart turn cold. When he turned around, there was a shock for him. On the stone table filled with food, there was an Asian girl in ragged clothes. What is this? Benefits? No, it is not. Trimagasi told Gareng, the girl's name is Maharu. Rumor is that she and her daughter were separated at the vertical prison. Because the prison floors changed randomly once a month, if Maharu was assigned to the bottom floor, then she would try to hold on until the end of the month. Until she got back to the upper floor, she would go down again to look for her daughter. Maharu really loves her daughter. In this hell on earth, she has learned a very cool self-defense technique. But anyone lust for her body all die in a very pathetic way. Gareng had no mind to worry about Maharu. At night, he saw a red light lit up. A very strong smell immediately entered his brain. Before he fell into a coma, he faintly heard Trimagasi mumble, "When the anesthetic comes, destiny changes. Hopefully when we wake up, we could be on a better floor." Unfortunately, the reality is always the opposite of the dream. When Gareng opened his eyes, Trimagasi said excitedly, "I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that we have been assigned the 17th floor. There was almost no food left there. The good news is I woke up first and tied you up. Until I'm really hungry, don't blame me for being cold-hearted." The bound Gareng struggled to escape. He tried to persuade Trimagasi not to eat him, but under the primitive lust of hunger and thirst, things like morality or conscience haven't existed. Trimagasi held back until the 7th day. He really couldn't stand it anymore. Shakily, he picked up his knife, went towards his inmate, and said, "Sorry. Sorry, I'm hungry to death. Rest assured, I will only cut 1 piece of meat every day. I won't eat much." When Gareng was about to faint because of the pain, the suspension plank came down again. Maharu smashed the wine bottle from behind, causing Trimagasi to pass out. Then she stabbed. Trimagasi was dead. Despite being saved by Maharu, Gareng's nightmare had only just begun. Maharu continued to go downstairs to look for her daughter. He was left alone with Trimagasi's body. At first, Gareng didn't want to eat human meat. But over the next few days, hunger had crushed his last sense. Even the maggots that appeared out of rotting flesh also became delicious and nutritious foods. His spirit gradually collapsed. Trimagasi's hallucinations then appeared. He knew he had gone from a civilized man to a beast. Fortunately, the 1-month penalty was finally over. The third time, he was assigned to the 33rd floor, which was closer. A messy-haired woman held a Dachshund dog in her lap and greeted Gareng, who had been lying down. "Do you remember me? The person first interviewed you and approved your volunteer application was me. Now I have come here too." Completely different from the selfish realism of Trimagasi, Amogiri was an idealist from head to toe. Over the years, she had sent countless people into vertical prisons. She came here intending to experiment with the utopian world. Every day, the table of food would be eaten by many people. When it reached the 33rd floor, there was still some spare. But Amogiri very slowly put the food onto the plate. She ate on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and her dog ate on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. She even advised the prisoners downstairs, as long as we unite, just eat our part, people downstairs can also fill their stomachs. The person downstairs heard this, they looked down on her. "Why should you care about the life and death of the people downstairs? I will eat as much as I want." Seeing Amogiri being talked back like that, Gareng took off his pants and shouted downstairs, "Eat shit. If you don't listen, I will make sure for you to eat hot things every day." Unexpectedly, this intimidation was much more effective than an awakening conscience. The people downstairs started to share the food, but Gareng opened his arms and expressed his regret with Amogiri. "I can only go down, I cannot go up. The lower floor can only force the lower floor. If we want to change the upper floors, it is truly impossible." After the ideal has been broken, Amogiri revealed her wounded chest. She told Gareng, "I have end-stage cancer, so I choose to enter this vertical prison. The purpose is also to atone. Also, that girl named Mahura is a liar. As far as I know, there were a total of 200 floors, and there was never a child here. Is it really like that? Of course not. Time to swap at the end of the month." Gareng really couldn't believe his eyes. He was assigned to the 202 floors. And now Amogiri's ideal had really collapsed. She chose to end her own life, and left her body for Gareng. "I don't want to eat people anymore." Gareng frantically smashed against the wall but only hear the sounds of hunger coming from his stomach. "If you want to continue living here, you must forget who you are." Don't know how long it has passed, the red light lit up again. Gareng was awoken by the sound of joy. "Bro, we're so lucky. Here is the 6th floor." The speaker was a black man named Baharat. He carried a 40-meter long rope all the time. His goal is to wait for a day he was assigned to the floor closest to the exit. As long as the person upstairs could help and pull him up, he for sure would be able to escape this hell on earth. Gareng watched as Baharat threw the rope on the 5th floor. The person upstairs pretended to agree. When Baharat was about to reach the upper floor, he changed his mind and played him. At that moment, Baharat really wanted to die. Gareng also completely understood that someone needed to change everything. Otherwise, the death lot would eventually be his. In the dark, he whispered in Baharat's ear, "Bro, there's no hope to get away. But I've watched for days, based on the time the plank stopped. I calculate that there are 250 floors here. We will share the food from the 6th floor down one by one. We have to tell everyone that we have to unite to live." So they removed the steel frame from the bed to use as weapons. They stepped on the suspending table and began their trip down. As long as some fools didn't listen, they would throw a hit first, then they decided not to share for the next 50 floors. Food had to be left for those who need it most on the last floor. Fortunately, there are wise people remind them, "Boys, if you do that, does the prison guard know? You too must keep the messages sent to the 0 floors. Take this Italian cake for example. If it can be returned to the exit perfectly, isn't that a declaration of victory by the people?" Thus, the act of evenly dividing the food turned into a battle to protect the cake. Though Gareng and Baharat were starved, they refused to touch the cake. Their hearts also fell into the abyss. The cell on the 200th floor or below was truly disastrous. Either they died together, or they ate each other. The flesh was scattered everywhere. Mahura's body was also among them. More frightening was the table had reached the 250th floor but still didn't stop. It kept falling. 251, 252, 253 to the 333 floors. Because of fighting for food, everyone had been exhausted. That's right, there were 333 floors in total. 2 persons on each floor, representing the demonic figure 666. While the two were desperate, suddenly there was a pair of bright eyes in the dark. That was Mahura's daughter. A dying Baharat gave out the cake. The message was no longer important. This could be used to save the baby. This was the only right choice. After Baharat died, Gareng finally breathed a sigh of relief. The baby was the real message. As long as it could survive back to floor 0, then it could prove that humanity still exists. The man thought that and happily accepted his fate of death. Behind him, the baby was lying on the table, rushed up to where the light was. After finish watching this dark work, The Platform, I want to say that even the fictional assumption of The Platform is not perfect. It has very coherent logic. For example, someone raised the question, if the table can be returned to the 0 floor, then why don't people climb up to escape? First, strong people didn't want to give up food that was not easily obtained and shared them to people on the lower floors, and were afraid to see the end. Inside everyone, they were betting. If you want to go up, you must go down first. Who can be sure that they can still come back alive after going down? As for whether the baby was saved or not, there is a darker explanation. The little girl didn't exist. What Amogiri said was true. Gareng and Baharat died on the 333rd floor, the cake was returned to floor 0 as they want, but the food manager didn't admit that this was an effort by the people in the prison. On the contrary, he said because there was hair in the cake so people didn't eat it. If you ask, I would say that I hope the baby really survived. After all, even in hell, you must look up to heaven, and must always believe that good things will finally come true. Okay, today's story is over.